All right, you should have the consumer choice problem. This relates to material that is covered in Chapter 20. Um, you should have already watched the lecture, the video on the consumer choice model. If you haven't watched that, I recommend you go ahead and do that. Here, I'm not going to be explaining everything. I'm going to simply explain how you go through the praxis problem. Okay? To summarize the model, what we're trying to do is think through what is the most efficient way to allocate a resource. In particular, we're looking at, as a consumer, what's the most efficient way to spend your money? And the idea is very, very simple. You want to take each dollar and spend it where it will produce the most benefit for you. In the consumer choice model, we talk about the benefit, we call it utility, and simply means the satisfaction you get from receiving something. Here, we're going to keep this as simple as possible. We're assuming the consumer has only $9 of income. There are only two goods that the consumer is interested in purchasing. Apples represented with an A, bananas represented with a B. Apples, we're assuming, cost $1 a piece. Bananas cost $3 a piece. Okay? And we're going to be applying what's called the equal marginal principle. That is, you want to spend your money, you want to spend each dollar where it produces the greatest extra benefit. And if you do that, you're going to end up where the marginal utility per dollar spent on apples will be the same as the marginal utility per dollar spent on bananas, and it would be equal for every product you're buying. Okay. Why do we end up there? We end up there because if at a point in time this ratio is greater than this ratio, think about what that means. Marginal utility of apples over the price is telling you the extra utility you get from spending an extra dollar on apples. This is the extra utility you get from spending an extra dollar on bananas. Well, if this is the case, it means that by spending an extra dollar on apples, you're going to get more benefit, more utility, than if you spend that dollar here. Okay? And so if this is the case, what you need to do is increase your consumption of apples. If the opposite were the case, and think about what that means. This would mean that bananas are a bargain for you rather than, oops, sorry about that, should be A. This would mean that bananas are a bargain for you relative to apples, because if you spend an extra dollar on apples or bananas, you're going to get more benefit than if you spend that dollar on apples. So if this is the case, it suggests you should spend your next dollar on bananas. Now, how does this work out? Well, think about what you've been given here. You've been given the income that you have to spend, the price of each good, and the utility schedules. Okay? This is showing you the extra satisfaction this consumer gets from buying the first apple, the second apple, third, so on. Okay? Notice diminishing marginal utility. As he buys more of this product, each extra apple doesn't provide as much satisfaction as the previous one did. Okay? The second apple adds 16 units to the satisfaction. The first one added 20. The third only adds 14. He values the extra ones, but he doesn't get as much extra satisfaction from the additional one as he got from the previous one. Same thing is true over here, but this is for bananas. The relevant comparison is not what does he like most, apples or bananas. The relevant comparison is where should he spend his money? Where is the most efficient way to spend each dollar on apples or on bananas? Now, looking at these two columns, what does this consumer like more? What does he get more satisfaction from? Well, it's clear he likes bananas more. First banana gives him 48 units of utility. First apple, only 20. Okay? So if you ask him, what do you like more? If you're just going to give him apples or bananas, say, what do you want? He'd say, bananas. But most of the time, people don't give us stuff. We have to buy it, and there's a price. So what is relevant is, what is the extra satisfaction per dollar spent on the good? So that's why we have to calculate this column and that column. We have to take the marginal utility from the first apple and divide by the price. See, this means if he gets the first apple, he gets 20 units of utility. He has to spend $1 to get it. So the marginal utility per dollar spent is going to be 20. Now, for apples, I've made this really simple. When we divide by the price, since the price is only 1, each one of these numbers here is going to be the same as the utility column because we're simply dividing by 1. So this will be 16, 14, 12, 10, and 8. So this is going to be a really important column. For bananas, we've got to do the same thing. We ask if he gets the first banana, what is the satisfaction he gets from that? It's 48. Okay? But notice over here, he's going to have to spend $3 to get those 48 units of utility. So per dollar spent, he is only getting 16 units of utility. We're taking the marginal utility from bananas, dividing by the price of 3. We're going to do that all the way down. Okay, so that gives us 14.7, 12.0, 10.0, 8.0, and 6.7. Okay. What do we do now? Well, think of this intuitively. You've got your consumer, you've got $9 to spend. Start out and simply ask, where's the best place to spend the first dollar? And you're comparing this number with this number. Okay? When he buys the first apple, he's getting 20 units per dollar spent. When he buys the first banana, he's getting only 16 per dollar spent. Okay? Now, he likes the banana better, but the banana costs more than the apples. So we have to compare this column with that column. Okay? Since 20 is greater than 16, we say his first purchase is going to be that first apple. Okay? So that's what he's going to buy first. He starts out with $9 of income. Okay? He's got $9 to spend. When he buys the first apple, what does it cost him? Well, the price of apples is $1, so he is spending $1. Oops. And that means he has $8 left over. What do we do now? We follow the same process. We just keep doing the same thing, asking where should I spend the next dollar, and we keep doing that until he's spent all his money, and then we stop. Okay, that's the whole model. So he's bought the first apple. What are his options now? Well, he could buy the second apple, and that would produce for him 16 units of utility per dollar, or he could buy the first banana. And that would give him 16 units of utility as well. Okay. Now, if you're thinking, but well, why don't we go to here? Well, he hasn't already bought the first banana yet. So he's choosing between a second apple or the first banana. 16 or 16. They're equal. Okay. So we can say he's indifferent between the two. Okay. On the other hand, I wouldn't expect you to go into the details of this, but since the price of bananas is 3, when he buys that first banana, he's getting 16 units of extra utility on $3. So we're going to be really technical. He would prefer that first banana next. Okay? So he bought the first apple. Now he's going to buy the first banana. What does that cost him? Well, the price is $3. So he had $8 left over. He spent 3 more, so he only has $5 left over. What do we do next? We follow the same process. We ask, where's the best place to spend the next dollar? What are his options? Well, he hasn't bought the second apple yet, so he could buy the second apple. He has bought the first banana, so he could buy the second banana. If he buys the second apple, it's going to give him 16 units of utility per dollar spent. If he buys the second banana, it's going to give him only 14.7 units of utility per dollar spent. 16 is greater than 14.7. So the most efficient way to spend that next dollar is to buy the second apple. Okay? And what does that cost him? Apples are $1 a piece. So he's spending now an extra dollar. He now has $4 left over. What do we do now? Well, we keep repeating the process. We say, given what he's already bought, where should he spend the next dollar? He's made 3 purchases. So now the question is, should his next purchase be to purchase the third apple? If he does that, the extra utility he'll get per dollar spent is 14. Or he still hasn't bought the second banana yet. He could buy it, and it would give him 14.7 units of utility per dollar spent. So does he want 14.7 or 14? Well, 14.7 clearly is greater than 14. So this is the best purchase for him next. So he buys the second banana. When he buys the second banana, what does that cost him? $3 a piece. So it's another $3 expenditure. He's only got $1 left. So what does he do next? Well, follow the same process. Does he want to spend it the next dollar here and get 14 units of utility? Or does he want to spend the next dollar on bananas where he would only get 12 units of utility? Okay. 14 is greater than 12, so he chooses to buy that third apple next. Apples are $1 a piece. And that means once he spends that, he doesn't have any money left. He spent all of his income, so we're done. What's our conclusion? Okay. Well, he likes apples. He likes bananas. But what we have concluded is that if he is limited to $9 of income, because the price of apples is 1, the price of bananas is 3, okay, we have now concluded that the combination of apples and bananas that will give him the most utility is 3 apples and 2 bananas. Okay. What's his total utility here going to be? Well, total utility is going to be the utility he gets from the 3 apples that he's buying and from the 2 bananas that he's buying. So he's get the first apple gives him 20 units of utility, second gives him 16, third gives him 14. That's utility he's getting from the apples. The utility he's getting from the bananas would be First banana gives him 48 units of utility, second 44. Okay, so what we find is the utility he's getting from apples is 50. The utility he's getting from bananas is 92. So the total utility he's getting is 142. If we've done our analysis right, then that means that 142 is the best way for him to spend the $9 that he has. It's the best in terms of his preferences. Given his preferences, given the value that he places on each of these goods, and given his income and given the prices, he can't do better than 3 and 2. Okay? If he bought more apples, well, he'd have to cut back on his bananas. And if we work through it, we could show his total utility would go down. If he wanted more bananas, well, he'd have to cut back on apples. And his total utility, again, would go down. The main conclusion here is, if this ratio is greater than that one, if the extra utility from $1 spent on apples is greater than for bananas, then apples are a bargain, and it means that he needs to spend his next dollar there. If the reverse is true, then this good is a bargain. Now, do we go through this because people are going to sit down, figure out what their utility schedules are, and think through it in detail like this? No, people aren't going to do that. We go through this example because this is a concrete way to illustrate the process that we actually should go through every time we spend $1, every time we decide how to use the next hour of our time. We should ask, what is the benefit of spending that dollar on one good versus another good? Okay? And even though you're not consciously going to do these calculations, you should be thinking in terms of, what's the best use of my money? Okay? If you just buy things spontaneously without making any, giving it any thought, you're not going to be using your money to get as much benefit as you could have gotten if you had thought through the decision a little more carefully. I'm not saying you have to do the calculations. I'm saying you have to think about, what are the different goods worth to me, and what is the cost? Okay. All right, that's it. Oh, on the sheet for actually filling it out, in the middle there it says this consumer will purchase, and it has a number of blanks, and then it says then. Well, that's just to lead you through the process we've been going through. Okay? Here we determined he's going to buy the first apple, then he's going to buy the first banana. That's what I want you to do here. I'm trying to lead you through this process. Okay.